Hi, this is Dovid Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching with our friends over at Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, we're so happy to have you along once again as we continue going into our subject of dating, marriage. We'll talk a little bit about shalom bayis, kind of fun and things that go bump in the night. We have a sponsor this week, Anonymous, in the schus, the Mashiach should come. I have to tell you, we have a lot of these altruistic type of people who are watching this podcast who want to sponsor it just as a schus that the Mashiach should be able to come for Klal Yisrael. And who's to say? I can't tell you how many people I keep meeting who are watching this podcast. It is mind-blowing. I have to tell you that if I ever stopped to think about it, I would just freeze up. I don't know what I would do. I would just sit here and stuff. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm sitting here talking to myself and, people are listening in. But I just had some young ladies over my house from a seminary. They all live in Flatbush. And they say that they all watch the podcast. Everyone they know watches the podcast. And they said, you gave some recipe before Yontif, and all Flatbush made it. Now, I'm sure that's an exaggeration. But the fact that anybody was spending their Yontif preparations making one of my mother's soups, nothing here is my own stuff. So maybe when we finish this series, we'll throw in a few more recipes that maybe we haven't given yet. My producer, Michael, told me that somebody wanted a collection of all the recipes that I mentioned, and he did a search, and he did for recipes, but he couldn't find them all, and he finally realized you have to search under "It's Easy Stupid." You know why? Because it is. Anyway, so okay, you went out on 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, 100 days, 2 million days. I don't know how many dates you went out on, but you're sure now that this is the one. And once again, a very difficult decision to make. Difficult decision. Yeah. You want to get married, and the other person wants to get married. That's up front. That commitment is there before we start. You know what you want out of life, and they know what they want out of life. And the two of you want the same thing out of life. You've checked into this person, and this person has checked into you, and both of you find that you check out. Are there flaws? Yeah, sure. Anyone who doesn't have any flaws, then you can be sure that there must be some kind of problem. And fine. So you checked it in. Soivu Makabel, as the Gemara says. Yeah, nobody's perfect. I heard a story about a Rebbe where a boy brings a piece of paper saying what he's looking for. The Rebbe looks at it and says, this is 3 shidduchim. There's no way one person can have all these things, and some of them are contradictory. So, that's what they used to say. I'm looking for a tall, short, old, young, fat, thin, rich, poor person. It's like there's no way. Sometimes things are just contradictory, and you have to learn how to make decisions. This is going to be one of the hardest decisions. Can't know for sure. When I used to run NCSY in Long Island, so one of my jobs was, of course, to hire a caterer. And I said, I know the caterer that I'm looking for. He's inexpensive, his food is very good, and he's very reliable. I never found that caterer. I found someone whose food was very good, he was a little more expensive, and he wasn't reliable. I found somebody whose food was okay, they were less expensive, and they were very reliable, but I couldn't find everything. You have to make choices. There are people who freeze up. They can't make a choice. They don't know what to do. But the fact of the matter is that at the end of the day, you have to make choices. So I go out with a person. We both want the same things out of life. We find each other intelligent and attractive. Somebody wrote me an email after my last podcast, didn't seem to get exactly what I said. It could be you go out with somebody and they're not attractive, and that's not the only consideration. I agree with you. I said specifically, It's not that you don't find the person attractive, it's that you find the person unattractive. You find the person repulsive, repugnant. There's nothing I can, what are you going to do? And there's no, so you say, well, keep going out and maybe that'll change. In my experience, that almost never changes. I can't say never, but it almost never changes. There are people who don't find somebody particularly attractive, but they don't find them unattractive. And after a while, their position grows, it changes as they get to know the person better. It could be, like I said, by personality, somebody's having a bad night, etc. But there could be people who just, you can see right away. You can see right away that, whoa, unpleasant. Yeah, and like I say, could be they're having a bad night. Anything could happen. But okay, you find it, you like each other's personality, you find each other attractive. You're ready now to say, I want to get married. How do I know for sure? You don't. You don't, and you never will. You do not come with a sticker, with a little barcode, and you put the two of them together, zing, up. Look at that, made a heart. Isn't that beautiful? Zing. I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. Not going to happen. And Akash Baruch Hu doesn't want it to happen. Because then there'll be no choice. I used to tell this to girls when I used to teach years ago. You know. I'd say, okay, you made your list. Here's your list. You get back home, you have the talk with your parents. I'm ready for shidduchim, etc. You know. Have you thought about it? Yes, I have. You may or may not show them the list, but the list is there. And 5 minutes later, there's a knock on the door. And there's a young man. Hi. Hi, who are you? I'm your Bashir. I beg your pardon. Check the list. Everything's there. I look like what you wanted. I went to the right yeshivas. I come to the right family. Where should I put my stuff? When I get married today or tomorrow, I mean, you got a dress, you know. And you're like, whoa. Yeah, I need a little time to catch up to this. Very often, one person in the process is ahead of the other person. More likely than not, it's the man. Because a woman has so much that she has to consider. She has to think about, you know, she's going to get pregnant. She's going to move with this guy. She's going to change her name. Her life is going to change. And the guy is like, you cook? Okay, I'll live here. And you do laundry? Yes. You know, guys are, you know, it's easier for them. You know, they don't have that same agonizing quality that women do, where they rethink and think it again and talk it up with their friends. And, you know, one of the greatest sources of insight into the frum world today is a comic strip called The Kichels. I am a big fan. It's the when my wife gets all of the Jewish publications. You know, I don't read everything. I go to all of the recipe sections just so I can laugh, because they make everything that I make only more complicated. I can't imagine it comes out any better, because my stuff is delicious. Yeah. And I turn to the Kichels. I turn to That's an Idea in the Hamodia. And I read the based-in case. And I think that's about it. I think I covered everything. But the Kichels is just so brilliant. And they did this once with this girl was after a date. She's calling up all of her teachers, calling up all of her BAM course, everything, talking to them. The guy's like, yeah, okay. So very often the guy is like, okay, this makes sense. This is good. I like you. You like me. You know, let's get married. And the girl's like, I don't know. Now, sometimes it's the guy. Guys also sometimes have difficulty having to make that decision. How do you know for sure? So you don't. I don't know if I told this over or not. If so, I apologize for repeating myself. I don't know if I told this over or not. If so, I apologize for repeating myself. Anyway, the Ben Yehoyada says, how come we don't know who our Bashert is? We don't know. We don't come with stickers. Yeah? How come? Says, it tells a story. There was a Rav of a town, and he was beloved. He was beloved. I have to mention the passing of a great human being, a great man, a great Talmid Chacham, a great Rav, Rabbi Yehuda Kelema Zatzal, who was the Rav of the youngest of West Hempstead. I had the schus to have a kesher with him, to find somebody who had a gift to relate to every single person. And I can tell you for myself that if I was sitting in one of his shiurim, when I had the schus to be by one of my family members in West Hempstead, he would ask a question and I would offer up an answer, and he always made it sound brilliant. And if I asked a question, he made it sound brilliant. And listen, most of my rebbeim did not treat me that way. But it could be also a balabas without so much background who gave an answer, and he would go, "That's very interesting because," and it was just amazing. Just amazing. The way he understood people is such a gift. His knowledge was unbelievable. Yeah, there's somebody I know who is very, very smart and extremely well read and very difficult to impress. And he asked Rabbi Kelema a question, and he referred him to an article in a particular journal, and the fellow read the article, and he came back and he says, it doesn't talk about my question. And he says to him, "I'm surprised. It's in footnote 17. When I was running NCSY and by extension the OU in Long Island, so we had a meeting of Rabbanim, and I remember that there was one Rav there who was a professor with a PhD, and Rabbi Kelema was there. And I said we wanted to try to set up a continuing adult education, school that would travel around the different neighborhoods. And this Rav said, "Yes, of course, like I can't remember it. It was some German name, in German. It goes, oh, yes, like the such and such." Rabbi Kelema says, "Oh, yeah. The such and such, it was in Berlin in 1830. This guy did it the whole thing. And I remember this Rav said to me another time, he says, he's such an unbelievable Talmid Chacham. And you know what he spends most of his time doing? Marriage counseling. Dealing with families, dealing with couples. I don't get it." I did. He could just walk into any room and you felt like he was your best friend and that he loved you and that he cared for you. It was, I have not met many people like that in my life. I could probably count them on the finger of one hand and still have fingers left. But I just read an article where someone said that when he applied for the job, so they contacted his shul in Boston and they gave him a terrible review. And the people were shocked. And afterwards, one of the people in the committee admitted, "We don't want him to leave." So we gave him a bad review, right? Okay. That was the reason I brought this up, but also just to note the passing of an exceptional individual. In any event, so this Rav had been the Rav of this rather large city, and everybody loved him, and he did a great job. But he was getting old, and he had a gift. His gift was that he realized when he was no longer able to do the job. There was a book that came out called The Peter Principle. And the Peter Principle states that everybody raises themselves up to their own level of incompetence. Why? Because you do a good job, you get a promotion and a raise. And if you do a good job there, you get another promotion and a raise. And this keeps going on until you don't do a good job. And then they leave you there. Really, they should move you back down to the last job that you did well, but okay. So, unfortunately, especially in Habatzis Torah, a lot of people are carried out kicking and screaming. I had a schus that I was Long Island director of NCSY for 9 years, and I realized I had maxed out what I had personally to give. I wasn't being mechadesh anymore, I was maintaining. I wasn't taking it to the next level. So I felt like it's time to take on a different challenge. And I left and everybody was shocked. They said, but you're doing so well. Your region is so successful. You're doing well, with the communities, with this and that. And I said, right. I could stay and live off of this until I reach the point where I'm no longer effective to the point that they have to force me out. I'd rather go out when I know that I've done a good job and move on to my next challenge. But a lot of people are not like that. They keep going until it's obvious to everybody that you have worn out your welcome. I mentioned this in the past from Avram Chaim Foyer, who is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the Gdolei of our door. Very, very special fellow, son-in-law of Gifter and Rav in many places. And just, I flatter myself by counting him as a friend, even though he's, of course, a mentor. But that's how he is. He's just such a special person. And he told me that he refused to take a contract when he was a Rav. So I never want to hear from anybody that we're stuck with this guy. Oh, he's got another 3 years on his contract, or he has a lifetime contract. We got to keep him. He says, anytime you get tired of me, give me a month notice and no problem. I'll find a job. There's plenty of things I can do. Don't worry about it. So this Rav was smart. He saw that he no longer had the yechilas to handle a community of this size. And he decided that he was going to retire to a smaller community. This is an amazing thing when you see it. Rabbi Miller, who was the bedrock of Pittsburgh for so many years, decided it was time to make a change. Went to Calgary, Canada. Not a very large group. I spoke there once, and they said, you got one of the largest turnouts, about 100 people. You got one of the largest turnouts that we've ever gotten. And most of the people were Jewish. But he saw it. It's time to move on to whatever the next challenge is, right? So this Rav saw, I could keep this job and I could keep going and the people would be happy with me, but I know for myself it's time to move on. So he asked Rishus from the city if he could retire. He says he's afraid to keep this going. And they said, listen, if you're worried about your health, that it's going to put too much of a stress on you, then by all means. So he sends out his resume, and small towns, to be able to chop up a Rav of this caliber, of course, they were thrilled to pieces. And offers came from all around, and he finally accepted one of the offers. Fine. So came moving day. So the carriage comes to town, and he pulls into town, and he says, where does the Rav live? He says, why? He says, well, we're taking him to his new town. He goes, you're trying to steal our Rav? Get him! And the people rush the carriage, and he manages to turn it around and run out of town as they're chasing after him. And the Rav's sitting in his house. He's waiting, And he finally sends a message. And they said, we tried to come in, and they tried to kill us. So he calls over the elders of the city and says, I thought you said I can leave. He says, of course you can leave. He says, then what happened? He goes, I have no idea. He says, all right, it's been a mistake. So he sends a message, come back. All right, so the wagon driver comes in. He starts going down the street, and they say, he's back, get him! And they rush the carriage a second time, and he runs away. I was waiting. He's got his family, his packages, And he sends a message. He is asking the second time. So he calls up the elders. He says, I thought you said it was okay if I leave. He says, yeah, we have no hakpadas. He says, why is this happening? He goes, I don't know. He said, listen, promise me that he'll be able to come into town unmolested. So listen, we can't control everything. Promise me. They promised him. Anyway, the carriage comes in, goes down the street, and the people are lining the street screaming, murderer, thieves. And he gets there. He says, Rabbi, these people are crazy. Get in the wagon quick. We'll try to get you out of here in one piece, So they load everything up. And he turns to the elders and he says, my high, what was going on over here? And they said, Rabbi, our parting gift. He says, what do you mean? He says, listen, every town has problems. And every Rav has problems. Rabbi Yisrael Salanta once said, any Rav who nobody wants to run out of town is not a Rav. Yeah, and any Rav who lets himself get run out of town, yeah, is not a man. But Chavetz Chaim agreed to take a Rabbanist position. He said, but the first time somebody fights with me, I quit. So the first Din Torah came to him, and he heard the dude stud him, and he paskin, and the other side started screaming, what? That's not fair. He goes, that's it, I quit. I'm out. He says, somebody will get upset at you, This Rav comes to town, they say, Rabbi, I hope you are a rabbi forever. He says, that's so nice. He says, yeah, we've had 3 rabbis. Each one was worse than the one before. I hate to see what comes next. He says, you'll go there, you'll pass it against somebody, you'll make a position, somebody will be upset. Let them know they had to fight to get you. And that says the Ben Yoyada is why we don't know who our Bashert is. Because you have to search. And at the end, you have to hope. Finding a zivig is kosher to Kriyas Yamsuf. What's so hard about Kriyas Yamsuf? Because Baruch Hu can do anything. Because first the Jewish people had to go in. So Hashem says, go into the sea. And he, come again? Just go in. Just go into the ocean. They're like, I don't know. Let's think this. So Nachshon ben Dovid says, I have faith, and he goes in. And they're like, go ahead, Nachshon, we're right behind you. And the water is up to his knees, and he says, I have faith. And they said, keep going. And it's up to his chest, and he says, I have faith. They said, you're doing good. And it's all the way up to his neck, and they say, he's dead. And just then the water splits, and everyone says, I knew it all the time. How many times you see that with a shidduch? This problem, that problem, that problem, and then they get engaged, and you're like, oh, makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Sometimes. But do you know for sure? I was having a discussion with somebody, Sivan, I'm going to be married 39 years. Someone said to me, well, you're lucky you married your Bashert. I said, I think so. I said, what do you mean? I said, there's no label. We have children, we have grandchildren, we're together almost 40 years. I think so. But do you know for sure? You never know for sure. Kadosh Baruch Hu created it that way. There has to be a certain amount of suffix. There has to be a certain amount of bitochen, a certain amount of faith. You have to throw yourself into the ocean and hope that it splits. Because that's what marriage is all about, right? You have to lean back, fall back, and hope the other person catches you. Because you're putting yourself, when you get married, in an extremely vulnerable position. So, okay. How you make this decision, you speak to the people whose opinions you respect, parents, rebbeim, chaverim, whatever it is. And if everything makes sense and you feel something, I mentioned that last time about chemistry. Somebody was upset with me. What is chemistry? What matters? Vus is vus. Yeah, okay. I said, that's my own feeling. When I define chemistry, I define what it means. I'm not talking about Hollywood, like, starry-eyed. Yeah. I'm talking about, that when the person's not there, you miss them. You want to be with the person. If you don't want to be with the person. One of my kids who got divorced, we saw some signs early on, So one of them was she went to America for a trip and she came back. She was back for 2 weeks and he never called. Ooh, little problematic. But she had faith. Anyway, so whatever it is, you make the decision. Mazel tov. One of my son-in-laws asked me permission to ask my daughter's hand in marriage. You've seen this in TVs and movies when you come to ask the parents for permission. And I said to him, do you know what's going on over here? Do you think you would have been dating my daughter all this time if I didn't want you to marry her? You don't have to check with me at this point. You understand? If we say yes, that means you can do it. So you don't have to go and ask the parents permission. Yeah, you don't have to get down on one knee unless you want to do an Al Jolson singing Mammy. Mammy, my little mammy. Yeah, that's beautiful. But, I know couples who got engaged like this. So, you want to get married? Okay. Some people are fruma, it's like, so we want to, you want to close? We can close. And then some of my children are hopeless romantics, and they, get a boat down on a beach, that little table there with candles and the signs and flowers. And hey, listen, whatever floats your boat in that particular case, quite literally. There is no right or wrong. I got engaged. We weren't planning to. I was one of those people who was ahead. I was always ahead of every girl I went out with, but in this particular instance, I was waiting for my to be ready. And we both sensed that we were ready. And I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. And she goes home, and all of her sisters are so excited, and the parents are so excited, And I got up in the morning. I called my good friend Joe Werfel, my associate director. And I said, Joe, I'm engaged. He says, does that mean you're not coming in today? I said, well, I'll come in, but I'll be a little late. He's like, all right. And then I said, I said, Dad, I got engaged. He says, did you buy you a ring? He says, no. He says, it doesn't count if you don't bring a ring. Oh, yeah. There's a reason I'm the way I am. This did not take place in a vacuum, my friends. Anyway, you don't need the ring. You don't need the ring. And I frankly, I don't even get the idea of the ring. Because shouldn't you want to have the colors input in the ring? I would think. Some people have a very specific idea. They want yellow gold, they want white gold, they want platinum, they want a diamond, they want this kind of a diamond, they want baguettes, they want this. Yeah. You have these American Israelis, they mix up all the terms. Now, when I get one of those rings that have the badats on it, I think they meant baguettes, but yeah, okay. But it works fine without the ring. Yeah, you only need a ring when you get to the chuppah. All right. Now you're engaged. Very strange thing. So where does this fit in to the general scope of things? Now let me explain to you what I mean when I say the general scope of things. The Rambam says in Hilchos Ishus, what is marriage? Marriage is two people meet in the shuk. It's the way he describes it. And they decide they're going to be married. And that's it. And they move in together as husband and wife. That's called marriage, or what we call nesuin. That is marriage. And at that point, you're married. That's why Eishes Ish applies to a non-Jew. Why? If they live together as a chazaka of husband and wife, that's called marriage. Or as Mel Brooks in The 2,000-Year-Old Man said, says everything is motivated by fear. He says, really? He says, sure. We're just shaking hands. You're afraid the person has something in his hands. You go, hey, how you doing, Charlie? So what's waving? You want to show? I don't have a weapon, So Carl Reiner says, what about dancing? He says, dancing? So when you shake his hand, you just have the hand. But if you have him dancing, so you got both feet moving so he can't kick you. He says, well, what about love? He says, well, of course, love. What do you need to get married for? Because if you were walking and a lion came and attacked you in the back, you would never know. So you say, hey, lady, you want to walk behind me? For how long? Forever, we're married. You don't even see each other till you get to high ground. So I don't know if that's exactly the way the Rambam was saying it, but two people decide that they're going to be married, what today we call common law marriage. Yeah, that's called marriage. And by non-Jews, yeah, how does it end? You say, so long, Charlie. And one or the other packs their stuff and they go. And that's the end. Comes along the Torah and superimposes another step. It's called either Kedushin or erison. The two terms are interchangeable. And it means that you first have to be mekadesh the woman by giving her something of value. And you say, harayat mekudeshesli, but we say petabasu, but it could be almost anything, as long as it's worth a pruta. Kedas Moshe v'Yisrael, and you give it to her, and you are mekudash. That is one of those great those English words that we use when we don't really have an English word for it. It's called betrothal. You're betrothed. Now, in English, betrothal is usually the same thing as an engagement, but we use betrothal as Kedushin, and that's what it used to be. They'd get a minyan together. You would give her the ring or some object of value, and you had two edim, and you are now mekudash. Right? If you want to end this arrangement, you have to get a get. You are married and not married. You're not married until you have the nesuin, where he is machnas her letoch beisai, and that is the chuppah. The chuppah is the bias. That's why the chassan walks down first, and he's kind of the chuppah as his bias, and then he's machnis the kala in, and the kala walks down, yeah, and comes into his house. The chuppah is supposed to be like the tent of Avraham Avinu, which was open on all four sides. That's why it's 4 poles with a covering. It's supposed to be Avraham's house that's open on all 4 sides. Somebody once said to me, and also after you pay the caterer, that's all you're going to be able to afford to live in. So you might as well get used to it. In any event, that's chuppah. And the birchos nesuin, what we call the Sheva brachos, they go on that. And that's why the very dramatic part of the chuppah, reading of the ksuba, where somebody gets up very dramatically, chasandanan, sutadei, chandadei, it really has no religious significance. It's an Aramaic document discussing what you have to give the wife if you get divorced. She gets the worn out begadim. You have to provide her with X number of this. You have to give him that, and all sorts of things like that. It's really a technical document. The reason we read it is to make a break between the two ceremonies, because in the good old days, and historically up until about the time of Rashi, these two ceremonies were separated by a year. You'd get together, you would have the Sudas Erison, he would give her the ring, and everybody goes home for a year. You are now betrothed, and you meet back in a year for the chuppah. This was so that the husband could put his finances in order. And so the woman had a year to put together her trousseau. It describes 24 different tachshitim, types of jewelry and garments that the kala would bedeck themselves with. And you had to get all these things together. That's why it says this was only for a nara. A Bulgaris didn't have to wait a year, because she's already old, she's over the hill, she has everything together. Bulgaris is 13. So, but they have a year, and then they meet back a year later and they have the chuppah. That's the way it was for most of Jewish history. At some point, we combined the two ceremonies because there were too many problems that could take place when Jews lived in gullus and exile, and suddenly problems come up, and this happens and that happens. And so you want to close the deal as quickly as possible and keep it as narrow as can be. So what's the engagement? So the engagement is the closest you get to it is what's described in the Gemara as shidduchim, where two people agree to get married. Yeah. Now, there is a minhag where sometimes at the Vart, and there's two stages very often. There's the l'chaim, where the two families meet and close relatives and things. And they drink a l'chaim to celebrate the fact that the couple is getting married. And then they have a vart. Vart is word, because you're going to give your word. And very often at the vart, they would sign the Tanoyim. The Tanoyim are the conditions of what we agreed to do, make a marriage, what we're going to give the couple. It's signed between the two parents. Yeah. And at the Tanoyim, the two mothers break a plate. And this is given to some of the single girls. It's supposed to be a segula, a good sign for them to get married. Why that should be, I'm guessing because if they cut themselves, they'll meet a nice eligible doctor. Yeah, I assume that's where the minute comes from, but I'm not sure. But anyway, so some people do the Tanoyim at the vart. Some people don't. Why? For the same reason that they didn't want to leave such a space between the Kedushin and the Nesuin. So some people wait until the wedding itself to sign the Tanoyim, which is, a little bit after the fact, but okay. Yeah. And they sign an agreement. Now, if you break off the relationship after the Kedushin has already taken place, you have to give a get. What happens if you break off during the engagement? Especially if Tanoyim have already been signed. Ask your local rabbi. And by that I mean your local rabbi who has access to Gedolei Torah. Because I know two Gedolei Torah who told couples who were going to break off the engagement to first get married and then write a get. And I said, that seems kind of counterintuitive. And they said, because when you agree to marry somebody, the mazolas come together in Shemayim, the two signs meet, and there is no instrument to make a break between a couple except for a get. That is the only thing, a bill of divorce, and there's no way to break it otherwise. A lot of people don't follow that psak. They break it off. It is considered customary for each side to give the other a letter of mechila, to ask forgiveness in case there was any problem there. This can, of course, lead to problems, because if one party did not want to break it off and the other one did. But that's what happens. The general rule is it's better to break it off during the engagement than it is once you're married. It gets much more complicated. So, but these are happy times. All right. So there are different minhagim. It is noig that the husband buys the kala engagement ring. Yeah. Very often it's a diamond ring. It's something very fancy. The wedding ring is not supposed to have a diamond on it. Not supposed to have any stone. It's supposed to be smooth. But this is where they buy the diamond. There are couples who say, tell you the truth, I really can't afford a diamond. So they get, quartz zirconium, looks like a diamond, and they give it to their kala, and they say, one day when we have money, we'll move on from there. Now, I don't know about every place, but in some places, it's also noig that the girl's father buys the chassan a watch. And I always said to my son-in-laws, pick out your watch. And Baruch Hashem, I didn't have people who were extravagant. They would pick out nice watches, but they weren't like crazy watches. I personally have a very simple approach. This is my watch. It is a swatch. The reason it is a swatch is because when I have a metal back, I get an allergic reaction. And this has a plastic back. Also, it has numbers. It doesn't have little lines or dots or things like that. It's easy to see the numbers. And you may not be able to see it here, but there are little lines in between them so you can see all of them. It has a second hand. The lights glow the hands glow in the dark. It has the day and the date. I don't know if you can see that over there. Yeah. It's black on white, so it's very easy to see. I had two people over my house at different times. They had this watch. I said, "Why'd you get that watch?" And they said, "Well, it's numbers. It's got the day and the date. It's black on white. It's got a second hand. It glows in the." They both get the same type, you know. But anyway, I was by someone's house who is a mechanech, and his son-in-law is there. And I guess we had somebody engaged and we were discussing watches. And the husband says, "Oh, you have to get this kind of watch, you know, whatever the watch it was." He had that watch. I said, "Well, what does it cost?" You know, it's about $1,000. I said, $1,000 for a watch? I said, "You're learning in Koilo? You're living off of other people's money? Shame sich nicht. You're not embarrassed to wear $1,000 watch?" I would be embarrassed to wear $1,000 watch. This one goes for about $50. Yeah, but I'd be embarrassed. I'm sitting and learning in Koilo, and I'm wearing it's makubal. Makubal? What does that mean, it's makubal? You don't have a brain in your head? You don't have a heart in your chest? You have no idea about what's right and what's wrong? You have your father-in-law, who was sitting there, by the way. He didn't really jump in at any point. I said, "You have your father-in-law over here, got a bunch of kids, he's trying to support, and you made him buy you a $1,000 watch? Have you no shame, sir?" Okay, that's me. A lot of people are like, "It's makubal, it's makubal." Well, why is that an answer? It's makubal. So somebody told me, "Oh, this is nothing among the Hasidim. Every Shabbos, now I send you this and you send me that. And I have to bring this gift and I bring that gift. Now this thing and that thing and that." I have a friend of mine, an American, married an Israeli, and I did a routine for him for years what it was going to be like. Right? I'll be sitting there going, "To American, זה מזל שקיפלת שידוך, eh? טוב, מדברים על הדירה." Anyway, he says to me, "I met the guy," I burst out laughing. "He was you." Anyway, when they had to take care of the furnishing, so he had to get blankets. So the guy says, "Well, puchamiti." That means real down blankets. He says, "Puchamiti?" He says, "I don't have puchamiti. I have polyester blankets, you know." Kach makubal. That's how it is. You have to do. And there's this attitude of what you have to do. My brother got engaged, his daughter got engaged. He was running around to pick up these special cakes. And he said to me, "Because you can't have a vort unless you have the cakes from," I don't remember where it was from, someplace in Brooklyn. "You have to get those cakes. If you don't have those cakes, you can't have a vort. And if you don't have a vort, then you can't have a wedding. And if you don't have a wedding, then you can't get married. So you better make sure and get those cakes." I don't know. Drishot. Magia li. It's coming to me. I gotta get. My brother-in-law, Rabbi Lichtman. So I was the first son-in-law. So my father said, "Well, I get you a gold watch." I was like, "Okay." You know, they give me a gold watch. I couldn't wear it because I had an allergic reaction. But I still have it in the safe. You know? So when it came his turn, my father said, "I want to get you a gold watch." He says, "Why?" He says, "Mikubal." He says, "How much were you going to spend on it?" So he told him. He says, "I'd rather have it in Sfarim." And my father would get him Sfarim instead with the money. He never got his gold watch. So, you know, but okay, mikubal, various gifts and things. Okay, so now you got to plan the wedding. Between me and you, now listen closely. If you have not been married, then you won't appreciate this. If you have been married for many years, then you'll understand. When my wife and I were engaged, we spoke to this Rav who had been married for 20 years. And we said, when you look back at your chasana, what do you regret? And he said, without hesitating, kishka. And we said, come again? My mother-in-law wanted to serve kishka. We didn't think that you serve kishka at a chasana. I gave in on it. I'm still upset 20 years later. Children and grandchildren, that they serve kishka at my wedding. Now listen closely, okay? You decide when you want to get married, and there's different considerations that go into that. That you'll do with your consultation with a rabbi. Find a hall. Listen to me, okay? There's only one consideration. It's a hall with a lot of dancing, because that's what you want at your chasana. You want dancing, yeah? Whether or not it has this fancy thing or that fancy thing or this thing, that thing, those things are not what's important when it comes to a wedding. You want to have a lot of dancing. As such, you want a lebedika band. Now listen to me. I know I'm talking to the wall. I know that. Quite literally. There it is. Studies have been released that people have lost their hearing from these bands. They're blasting the music. It's too loud. It's damaging people's hearing. I know fathers who went over to the band, and the band said, listen, I'm sorry. If we don't play loud, then we will not be hired any place. So we have no choice. So you have to wear earplugs. You literally have to wear earplugs. I spoke about this before my nephew's wedding. Ironically, I don't remember why I was talking about this on the podcast, but I was talking about this. And I came to the chasana, and a guy was standing there with a big box of earplugs, handing it out to everybody. He says, I heard your podcast. Here's a pair. He said, shkoyach. It's painful. It's causing real hearing loss. The lebedik is not loud. Those are two different things. But okay, who am I talking to? Yeah, okay. I can't tell you about the food. What can I tell you? I can tell you what I think. Keep the food as simple and inexpensive as possible. It's just not that important. People who are coming to your wedding for the food, you don't want them there anyway. Open bar. One time we were making a chasana, and the other side said, so you're going to get liquor for the boys? I said, no, I'll bring a bottle of scotch for my friends. Why would I give it to the boys? So he says, no, the fathers like to give, alcohol to the boys, because then they dance, more lebedik. I said, if my future son-in-law doesn't have anybody who wants to dance with him unless they're drunk, tell him not to come. So they spread the word, and everybody brought their own booze. My son said to me at the time, it wasn't his class, and he said to me, Abba, you don't get it. It's true, I don't get it. You got to get drunk. Yeah. But okay. But you book the hall, you find the caterer. Sometimes it comes with the hall. And like I say, keep it simple. That's my opinion. We went to pick out invitations when we were engaged. They bring books and books and books. This font, this lashon, this paper, that envelope, this little thing you stick inside of it. And we were sitting there going through books and books and books. If I'm married almost 40 years, if I could do it over, I'd make flyers, run them off on the Xerox machine. Come to a wedding. Where? When? Bring your own booze, because it's not going to be a bar. And I've seen chasans and collars going crazy over the invitation. First of all, you need a logo, because you're making a new corporation, and if you don't have a logo, then it's not legal. And you have to make sure you have a logo, and nobody understands the logo. You have to explain to them, you see, I'm Eliezer, and he's Rivka, and this is the well, and you see, and there's the resh, and there's the olives. Unbelievable. See, the bird is this, I'm sitting there learning shot. And they agonize over the lashon. It says this, it says that. Oh, did it say like this? Honored grandparents, distinguished grandparents. Do we put in the mother's name, not the mother's name? Yeah. Okay, if you're in my age group, an invitation comes and you say, who's this? You open it up and you say, oh, so-and-so's making a wedding. Very nice. And you go to the calendar and you write down the date and the time, and then you stick it in the drawer if it comes with directions. You think I'm calling over the whole family. Let's take a look. What lotion did they use over here in the invitation? Oh, very interesting. Nobody cares. It is not worth a moment of your time. Life is too short to spend it worrying about invitations. Trust me. Photographers and video people. The key here is unobtrusive. I was an aide at the Chuppah. I couldn't see what was happening. The video guy kept getting in front of me. I kept trying to look around him just to see. He said to me, "Get in my way again, I'll knock you to the ground," he said to me. When you go to a chazana and you see everybody watching it, or the little camera of the video guy, you know there's a problem. It doesn't belong to the photographer. And I know this is tough. It's tough to say this. Yeah. When the chas and kala, after the chuppah, go into the yichud room, and then the video guy goes in there for an hour, and then they come out and they take the family pictures, and you leave everybody sitting at their table for an hour and a half, it's mamish midas achzorius. Don't do it. Take whatever pictures you want beforehand. Take whatever pictures you want at the end. Yes, you're going to look somewhat disheveled, etc., but it's not nice to people. The chasana is not a performance. The chasana is a chance to be, everybody to dance and to celebrate, not just leave people at the table. It's not a good idea. That's my opinion. Okay, so that's the orchestra. That's this. How you divide up the money is different. Minhagim. When I got married, it used to be that the boys' side gave flop, which was flowers, liquor, orchestra, and photography. When my brother made a chuppah, I made a chasana, so the other side said, no, now it's flops. So flops, he said, you have to buy the shaitel. So my brother was so upset. He says, I never heard of this. He says, it must be taking advantage of me because they know I'm a dumb bal tshuva, he says. He says, my next kid gets married, I'm going to find someone even dumber than me. I'm going to tell him, oh no, the minhag is that the boys' side gives flopsy, mopsy, and cottontail. I'll work out the Rashi Tavis, he says to me, don't worry. It's still one of the funniest things I've ever heard. But anyway, whatever it is, some people just split all the expenses. Some people give a number of how many people you're allowed to, this side can bring, that side can bring. Now, here's the important thing to remember. There is an old Jewish minhag, I don't know how far back it goes. As soon as the couple gets engaged, at least one side of parents, often both sides, go crazy, absolutely insane. They need to be medicated. And they start, we want this, we insist on this. I'm sorry, we're making the chaz. We want this, we want that. We'll fight for it. You fight for it. You have to fight. We're gonna fight. Everyone's gonna fight. Really? It's two different minhagim, right? Do you walk down the aisle with each set of parents bringing down their child, or do both fathers bring down the chassan and both mothers bring down? So someone asked Yaakov Kamenetsky, which is the better minhag? And he said, whatever the other side wants to do. Because in the final analysis, it's not that important. Is it worth a fight? I think it's worth a fight. You have to pick your fights. Decide what's really important and what issues are going to make. My parents were great. That whatever you want, right up until another week before the chasana. And then my father comes out with a Hamburg. Now my father, we were wearing tuxedos. He's got a Hamburg. He looked like the Godfather, you know what I mean? He says, we're all going to wear Hamburgs. I said, Dad, I can't walk down the aisle with a Hamburg. And he went crazy. He says, I give it on everything. I want one thing. I'm going to wear Hamburgs. Why? For the love of God. And I'll tell you the reason is, because you just met each other. How long have you had a chance? Chassan and kala. And so when the people who are closest to you, your parents, go crazy and they start fighting with you over every detail, this forces the chassan and kala to come closer together. They have to form a common front. They're the only ones they have left. But like I say, invitations, find the hall, find the band, get the date, and that's it. Do not obsess. Do not obsess. There are certain people who go crazy with the color scheme. They pick a color scheme where nobody has ever worn this color before. So you can't go to a gemach and get a dress. You have to make it special. They come out with a special piece of material. Everybody has to make the dress out of this, And you never wear it again. Donate it to a gemach or something. Is it really worth that amount of money? Time and expenditure and the refittings. One of my daughters almost missed her sister's chuppah because she picked up her dress and she decided it wasn't tight enough, it wasn't altered right, so she runs back to the seamstress. She showed up just in time for the chuppah. But she goes, looks good, right? Okay, so you make it to the wedding, right? There is a minhag in some circles. The chassan and kala do not see each other for the week beforehand. There are different reasons for this. One of them is so they don't fight. According to that reason, you don't talk on the phone either, right? There's a lot of tension. You'd be surprised how people can snap when they have to wear a Hamburg. So some people don't talk, some people don't see each other, And then you get there, and the kala sits at the smorgasbord. Yeah, she sits on a throne. She's surrounded by people. The band is there. And the chassan is at the chassan tish. There's a table with some sponge cake and soda and fluorescent colors. He's sitting there with a couple of rabbanim. Yeah. It's very quiet, Every now and then the door opens and you hear the music pouring in, and some guy's sitting there with a big plate of food going, "Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. I'll see you later." Boom. The door closes. I don't blame people. The food's in the other room. I understand that. Who wants to go sit here? But eventually they make their way there. Like I said, if they signed the Tanoyim then, that's when they signed the Tanoyim. And then they have the bedekin, where they lead the chassan down to the kala. Make sure it's her. There is something so sublime of that particular moment. Of course, we managed to cheapen it like we cheapen everything. So some guy does a little dance. He said, "I've seen a chassan come into a dance, carries a rose." Does that, But this isn't real enough. This isn't dramatic enough. Just the experience. Fine. And now you have the procession. Sometimes a very emotional issue in some circles. Who's walking down the aisle? Here in Eretz Yisrael, it's great. First, all the men walk down, then all the women walk down. Somebody was coming from America and said, "Am I going to be in the procession?" And I said, "Oh, yes." Everyone's in the procession. Na, 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 na. And everybody walks down. Everybody walks down. And then everybody from the kala side walks down, and they come into the chuppah. And the two mothers hold the kala's train of a dress. She walks around her chassan 7 times. She's entering into the 7 levels of his soul. Or she's building 7 levels of walls to protect her, like when we marched, around Jericho. Or the mother-in-law is following around saying, "It doesn't matter what level you reach, you'll never be good enough for my daughter." Fine. Then you have fill up the cup of wine. You make the birchas erison. And some people break the glass now. Some people break the glass at the end. I was at 2 chasanas with Scheinberg. That's all. He was Masada Kedushin. And each time he would turn to the chassan and he would say, repeat after me. Yeah? If I forget Yerushalayim, let my right hand forget how to work. And as he said, it was 2 chas in the same week. And as he says the pasuk, he started crying. That's why I've been at chasnas, and it's sure they do it beforehand, but and you break the glass. Why do you break the glass? You break the glass because there's a Gemara that says that they were once at a chasana and they saw people getting too carried away with the simcha. They were forgetting the churban, the destruction of Yerushalayim. So they took a very expensive kli and they broke it. And everybody, and they remembered the churban. That's what it's supposed to be. So that's why here in Eretz Yisrael, very often, just before you break it, everyone sings Yerushalayim, and they break the glass. It's something very special. I've been to many chasnas where the guy breaks the glass, and everyone goes, Mazel Tov! Na 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 na. It's like, how crazy this has become. You go to a chasana, you go to a restaurant, and a waiter drops a tray. It comes out of his salary, He breaks the tray. Everyone goes, Mazel Tov! Smashing things should not be a happy occasion. Yeah, fine. So you go down, and you give her the ring, and you're a art mekudeshesli, and you need 2 kosher witnesses to watch this, and then they read the ksuva, and then you have the berachas nesuin, and now you're married. And you leave the chuppah, and you go to the yichud room, and then you have the rest of the chasana. So that is a brief introduction to the technical aspects of what happens from the time you decide to get married till the chuppah. We will talk more about this next week, about Sheva Brachos, about the chasana, all those nifty things. And that's it. I've gotten a lot of letters from singles who tell me that they're gaining a lot of chizuk from this. So Mirza Hashem, all of you should be zoicha to find your bashert and build an emes and bayis and emes b'Yisrael. Those of you who have children in the parsha, you should be zoicha to see them married. Those of you who have friends, you should be zoicha to see these simchas. Those of you who are already married should be zoicha to have the true Yiddish nachas and simcha that comes with it. And that's it for this week. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can make a comment, you can send a message, write a letter, sponsor an episode. And that's it for now. I'm David Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.